Our medical correspondent. Let's talk now to Niall Dickson, who's Chief Executive of NHS Confederation, which speaks on behalf of the health and care system. Niall, good to have you with us today. Some positive news with the news of this antibody test. What hopes do you have for it?
Well, I think this is very good news because, I mean, everyone will remember in the early days there was quite a lot of optimism and talk about this antibody tests coming over the hill and saving us all, as it were. And then, of course, it was clear that the early antibody tests simply did not have the reliability, and putting in a bad test is almost worse than, well, is worse than having no test at all. So I think it's been something we've been hoping for, and it's clear the really good news is that this looks like it's a very reliable test. Of course, the caution, one has to say, is around the points that Fergus has just made, which is, if you have antibodies, does that mean you're immune, and for how long does it make you immune? Because the key point here is that if we know more and more people are immune from the virus, then of course it is easier to, first of all, in the NHS terms, identify those staff, make sure that those staff know that they have antibodies to it, and therefore they will still need PPE, they will still need protection and so forth. But it certainly enables the health service to deploy its staff more effectively, as it were, going forward. And then secondary to that, obviously, in terms of a lockdown and so forth, again, knowing which people have had the virus and therefore should be protected from it, and we'll need to know more about that, is again good news and should enable us to understand, apart from anything else, how the virus is spread and where it is spread to across the population. And again, that knowledge is really important in terms of fighting the virus and building on what will still be required, this test, track and trace programme.
We'll come back to explore that in just a moment, Niall, but picking up on the immunity question then, you are obviously urging caution on that because I guess there are still lots of unanswered questions, despite this being a reliable antibody test, as in what's the extent of someone's immunity, how long might that immunity last for, does your level of immunity vary, I guess, depending on whether you've had coronavirus without any symptoms or whether you've had a really bad case of coronavirus?
Yes, I'm not a virologist, but in terms of the viral load seems to be quite important in this. I think we'll need to just hear in the next, hopefully in the next few days, we'll hear the level of uncertainty which is around in relation to this. But I would say that in any event, having a reliable test is useful. And as I understand it, the science suggests that if you have antibodies, you may well have a degree of immunity. So it's not a worthless thing, as it were.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really good news to hear this morning. And I was asking you that really from the point of view of finding out how far your caution extends when it comes to news of an antibody test and the NHS and other areas getting back to work, getting up and running in a relatively normal way. Let me ask you first of all then, if this test is delivered, what does the government need to do? What does the NHS need to do to actually get that testing up to the right sort of numbers to make it meaningful?
Well, again, it depends on how the test is administered and how easy it is administered and how quickly the results of that test are able to be given, because those have been some of the logistical issues that we faced in the past. So I don't want to prejudge that material, which will doubtless come out today, but we're very much hoping that this will be an easy test to administer and very quick to get results. Those are the key things that you want going forward, and that there are adequate supplies of it, and that the distribution, which again has been a significant problem up to now, is overcome. Your wider question about the health service is we cannot underestimate that the point about how difficult it is going to be to try and jack up services again. Just as we found it was easier to put the lockdown in place than it has been to unlock it. Likewise, trying to build up these services again will be quite a challenge. And it will be a challenge in part because it's not a reversion back to normal. We've still got a service which is distorted, if that's the right word, or very much coping with significant numbers of COVID patients. So it is running two systems in one. It's the sort of back to more normal services alongside this system whereby we've still got very large numbers of COVID